Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb. I am the redneck, and you bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to get you to do it too. And as a reminder, as we do every week on this program, when we talk about going green, we ain't talking about mere environmentalism. We talking about something deeper, ecology, deep ecology, the recognition of the interconnectedness of all of life. And whether you come at that from a deeply eco spiritual feminist perspective, or you look at it from a hard science perspective, or like me, you say those are both absolutely valid ways of looking at the world. I'm here to tell you we are all interconnected in this web of life, and whatever we do to that web, we are ultimately doing to ourselves. And let's be honest, y'all, we doing it wrong. We're literally destroying Mother Earth faster than she can replenish herself. And as if that ain't bad enough, we're literally creating a racist, sexist, class oppressive society with the plunder and pillage of Mother Earth. And we are here to say we need to put a stop to that and get back to the way our ancestors used to live. And on that note, let's bring in our good pal Shane Knight. Shane, how you doing, brother?
It's a somber day, my friend.
Yeah,
Personally, I'm okay. Busy, but politically, it's a somber day.
it is, and I appreciate you jumping into it and being so real as you always are, Shane. Because, and you know what? When people ask me how you doing these days, y'all, I gotta actually separate it. I like to say, hey, on a personal level, man, I'm great. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I've reconnected with my junior high school sweetheart. Hey, Ruthie. We reconnected. What 12, 13 years ago. We got a 120-pound yellow lab that gets us out walking every day. I do meaningful, productive work for which I am respected by people I respect, hated by my class enemies, and ever more by members of my own class who are breaking fascist. Well, all I'm saying, Shane, is on a personal level, every box is checked. I am so good. Pause. Shane, I'm terrified. Like, fascism is not coming, it is here. The ecological collapse is accelerating. And I am finally seeing a little resistance coming from the people. Shout out, obviously, to Minnesota. Shout out to Chicago. Shout out to LA. Shout out to the people in the streets everywhere. And shame on the neoliberal Democrats who are trying to tamp down the resistance, because those folks ain't protesting, Shane. They are resisting an occupying force.
I agree, and it's getting even hairier by the minute. After Saturday, or was it Saturday? What day was Alex Pretty's murder? Was that Friday?
I think it was Friday, and thank you for acknowledging it as a murder, by the way.
Well, I mean, the dude was unarmed. He was disarmed by the ICE agents. They took his weapon from him and turned around and emptied an entire clip into his back. If that isn't murder in cold blood and broad daylight on a street in a city in this country, I don't know what.
And it was an open carry state. He was legally carrying to begin with. Like, compare that to Kyle Rittenhouse. The other thing I want to say, y'all, let's be very clear. That is the 10th murder of individuals in ICE control. Like, they're on track to kill 100 people this year. The number of illegal, immoral, and unconstitutional deportations are just continuing. And thank you, Etudio, for acknowledging it was an effing execution.
Yeah,
And
it was.
as a Marine, Shane, like I talk about you all the time, and I bring you up, redneck kid, part of the military draft. Let's be honest, that's
Yeah.
what you got into the military, right? You know that anybody with even a semblance of training would not have done that.
No, they would not. But that's the thing about these punks. They don't have any training. They're undisciplined. And they're expendable too. You look at what Trump, they don't give a damn about those men's lives. So much so that you've heard about this $50,000 signing bonus, right? That they're supposed to be getting. The fine print of that for those poor bastards. It's deviated out over 5 years. So you have to sign a 5-year contract and you get 10,000 after the first 6 to 8 months that you're in for the first year, and then every year consecutively after that. And here's a kicker. They have to pay it back if they leave before the 5 years is over.
Wow.
And you
I
know
mean, it's
those
just
nut jobs
again,
spin it
it's
as soon as they
it's
got it.
it's insult over injury. And I got to say, Shane, like to me, I am very clear. We have got to stop this madness. The Democratic Party won't do it. The leadership, elected officials, are not going to do it. Only ordinary people are going to be able to do it. And for my way of thinking, Shane, we are going to have to both resist this horrific harm, but we also have to build alternatives. And I can't think of a better person to have this conversation than Matthew Slaats, our guest. Matthew Slaats is the co-founder of the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network. Matthew Slaats and I both serve on the board of directors of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. Matthew is trained as an academic, but at his core, he's a straight up organizer. And it is my great pleasure to introduce my personal friend, my colleague, Matthew Slaats. Matthew, welcome to Redneck Gone Green.
Yeah, greetings, everyone. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you on this somber note, right? So we truth tellers here on Redneck Gone Green, Matthew. And so before we dive right into your work, and it is incredible, I do want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to the Redneck Gone Green community. And by that, I mean, take your time, but like, who are you and why the hell do you do the work that you do?
Yeah, this is a great question because it always you always think back and these memories kind of pop up to where you started and how you got moving forward. So, yeah, I'm a Midwesterner at heart. I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. An industrial town, a paper making town. But my dad worked for public radio, so I was this kid that would hang out in music studios and listen to records and in a little town, middle of nowhere. I would get exposed to music coming in from all over the country, and so it was something to learn from and connect with. I remember the first time I saw an NWA record sitting on a sofa, and I was like, "What is this?" And I threw it in there. I'm like, it blew my mind. So and so that's I get to be exposed to all that stuff. But I grew up. My grandfather was a farmer, right? Southwest Wisconsin. Really rooted in the land. He's one of those guys you could look out across a cornfield and you could tell what the weather was going to be like in 5 days, 6 days. Spent a lot of time on farms as a kid. Throwing hay bales around and going out with the cows and all that fun stuff, picking rocks. So definitely that worker mentality is in my bones. But then went off and did my own thing. So I spent some time in college, played a little sports, and then did some traveling. Went over to Europe for the first time and kind of got to see some new things. But
that'll open a Midwestern farm boy's eyes up, won't it?
Oh, it will. Yeah, it will. I mean, there's so many people I know that got out of high school and stayed, and I was like, okay, I got to go see what else is out in the world, and I wanted to go get out elsewhere and see what I could learn from and be exposed to, and then come back. I'm like, if I was meant to come back, I would come back. And then there's still part of me that is still so tied into all that stuff. Yeah, and then you kept working on other projects and different things. Again, all of it was kind of rooted in community. It was what makes a community vibrant and thriving, and all the good things that are around. I was really exposed to that, and so I kept wanting to look for that as I kind of grew up. And then I got involved in a bunch of stuff, and we moved eventually to Hudson Valley, north of New York City, and got involved in a bunch of stuff there. Everything from getting farms, food, housing stuff, environmental stuff, there was so much happening to learn from. And I was working on a little project in Poughkeepsie, New York, a town that most people kind of skip over as you go up the Hudson Valley, like buildings falling down, all kinds of different things. And it was like, what would it mean to kind of work with this community to think about what its future could look like? And that's really where I started to get into some of the organizing work that I was doing. It was about listening to people, just like going out, walking down the street, talking to people, hearing their stories, trying to think about how we could tell those to other people. And thinking about all the different ways that we could be working together to kind of envision a new future for the city. And that kept building on stuff. So it kept building. Later on, I got interested in some other projects, and my wife and I moved back to Virginia, where she's from, and so was in Charlottesville, Virginia, and still am a little bit. Thinking about stuff, organizing, working with public housing residents, all kinds of different things. And I think that one of the big things that kind of radicalized me was being in Charlottesville in 2017 during the Unite the Right rally. I think that was a traumatizing experience for the whole country. But again, like when we hear the whole country talk about that, like we were there, like the guy that was beat up in the parking garage was my daughter's after school teacher. Right.
Oh
So
my
like
God.
the relationships to those things that were happening were like really, really
So,
close.
Matthew, like I'm going to ask you to stop and remind people, or for folks who may not have been tracking it, like that Unite the Right rally. Like, tell us what that was and why it's so important in this story.
Yeah, I think the Unite the Right rally was an effort to like start to rally the troops, like, and I mean the troops, right?
That is to say, the brown shirt right wing troops.
Yeah, these you're talking about the fascists before, like these are the people, and they showed up in our town, right? Did not invite them. They showed up because they were activated to come down and challenge efforts of Charlottesville to build and respond to the histories of racism and that are kind of everywhere in the city. So
And we don't mean
Yeah.
casual racism. We
no,
mean literally blood and soil. We
yeah,
mean we will not be replaced. What were some of the chants?
yeah, Jews will not replace us.
Oh.
And the crazy thing is that all of that happened at the University of Virginia. That there's bits of that in the soil of that institution. There's many people that were part of that were graduates. So we got to think about those institutions not as how they've been, right, and how they've perpetuated some of these conversations. But yeah, we were there. On the ground, trying to battle, fight back against these people who showed up in our town and wanted to wage war in so many different ways. And yeah, and it was traumatizing. There were months after where people were angry. We were just very, very angry. The thing about me though is that
and I just want to remind folks, and remember, Heather Daniel Heyer was killed when
yes,
a car driven by one of these right-wing fascists intentionally killed her.
yes,
Right? Like there is the number of people who have been murdered by either brown shirts under ICE or by the right-wing fascist brown shirts that are being inspired, mobilized, and basically given carte blanche by the Trump administration is growing. We have to be very clear that these are not isolated events. This is intentional. It is deliberate. And like, again, Matthew, I welcome you to help me see it differently if you feel like I'm being overly dramatic.
I think it's part of a history, right? And that history has been in the United States for as long as it's been around, right? It's at the core of like what it meant to come to colonize the country, right? We were destroying native lives and people were fleeing. Black and indigenous people were fleeing in Virginia, were fleeing into the Dismal Swamp to get away from the effects of colonization. And so like those histories are all around us. They might not be seen or heard as much as they used to be, but they're here. And so, that resistance has always been a part of our culture. And so it's like, this pushing back of these things, and we're just continuing to fight those things and try to build a different world, right? I mean, it's about like moving beyond how capitalism has impacted us into something else. So,
And Matthew,
build.
it's worth noting that in this arc, uh, this is about the time that at least I got to know you, because we both serve on the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network Board of Directors. So there is no place left to flee. Thank you for that, Catherine. You're absolutely right. And uh, uh, Matthew, I'm going to invite you to say a word or two about what the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network is and why you joined it.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the solidarity economy conversation emerged from our response to the Unite the Right rally, right? We saw these things happening. There wasn't a deeper like criticality about both the political and economic systems that were in place, right? That was like, we'll take down these statues. Well, if we take down these statues, is that changing really much of anything? It's a good gesture, but like we were wondering, like, well, what does it really mean to shift a society? And so a bunch of us started thinking about solidarity economy. We got kind of like, we're reading about it, we were hearing about it, and we're wondering about it. And so that started a kind of a conversation like, well, what does that mean in Virginia, right? Like, we know it's a movement that's been global for a long time. Like, what does it mean in the context of Virginia, and as the center of colonization of North America, right? Like, we think that we should be the first ones to be addressing that thing. So that opened up. And then, I mean, I think the biggest thing about solidarity economy that like really got us excited was moving beyond these scarcity mindsets, these risk mindsets, right? Like, we have abundance for everybody. And so, like, if we rooted in these values of solidarity economy, of democracy, sustainability, pluralism, solidarity, and equity, right, we can build something beyond what we have in front of us. And so that was the challenge for us.
Matthew, I love how you just sort of laid out the principles of the solidarity
Mhm.
economy. And for me, a couple of things to observe. Number one, it is explicitly a post-capitalist perspective, right? It is embracing the fact that we need not just reforms, but we need new systems and new structures. The second thing that I love, and a hat tip to co-founder of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, Emily Kawano, who coined what I think is a beautiful phrase. She said, most left orientations or frameworks are theory in search of a practice.
Yeah.
The U.S. Solidarity economy movement is practice in search of a theory. In other words, all these things are already happening: worker-owned cooperatives, community land trusts, universal basic income, public banking, participatory budgeting. Like, all of this is happening. And the solidarity economy framework is an intentional, deliberate attempt to say, let's build a movement of movements to democratize the entire economy, and address the fact that our government has been thoroughly privatized and that we don't have a democratic republic, notwithstanding what we were taught in high school or junior high school. But instead, the solidarity economy challenges us to say, how can we engage in both politics, in praxis, in practice, and in policies that democratize the economy?
Yeah, and truly democratize the economy, not not just point at it and do it every. I mean, in Virginia, we have elections every year, but people are exhausted by those things because they don't feel like they do anything. So we need to have a true democracy where we are coming together and collectively making some decisions together about how our lives will move forward and how our land is taken care of, and how we want to treat people. It's such a key conversation, and it's in that solidarity, right? And we find that solidarity within ourselves, within our friends, within the land, right? That then we start to move beyond, what capitalism has provided us.
Thank you, Matthew. I love how you break it down without dumbing it down and just
Yeah.
talk in way like I could take you to a pool hall or a bowling alley and have these kind of conversations. So, from the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network and our work together, you were also instrumental in helping to launch an in-person gathering called Resist and Build in Richmond, Virginia. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what the heck Resist and Build is and why Richmond.
Yeah, I mean, resist and build is, I think, it's like two pieces of a puzzle, right? That we're trying to fit together that will move us towards the next step, right? We got to have the resistance. We got to be calling out the things that are holding us back, the things that are being done to us, right? We got to say no more. We've got to say, you need to please stop this. We need to step out and voice our opinion and be present in ways that we haven't been before. But then we also need to move beyond. Like, we need to imagine what could be possible. I say a lot that people are really good at the resistance thing. We're not always very good at the building of the next thing. And then the problem is that like politicians technically they kind of present some choices, but they're choices that benefit them, right? They don't necessarily
for their donors.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so we need to find ways that we can imagine and move towards that future. And David, you mentioned a few of them a little bit ago, which I think are ones we're trying to think about. Well, what does it take to actually do that in the context of Virginia?
So again, the Resist and Build is interesting because it's not really an organization; it's more of a movement building process. Can you give us a little short history of the Resist and Build? And folks, if you want to check it out, it's resistandbuild.net.
Yeah, I mean, I think resist and build in a lot of ways like you said, it's a gathering, right? It's a gathering of people coming together to coordinate and strategize about how do we move beyond these processes that were given to us, right? That these systems of power and politics that define who we are and who we become. And so, I mean, from my standpoint, is like it was an opportunity to like see who else was in the room, right? Because there's a beautiful, vibrant community of people that are doing that work around the U.S. But we're doing it in our own little silos, our own little contexts, responding to our own community needs. And the question is like, what happens when we actually start to put those things in relationship to each other and build towards something else? And so, so Richmond was an opportunity because we're coming out of COVID. I mean, the Virginia Solidarity Economy effort that we've been working on, until that time, some of us hadn't even been in the same room together. Most of our work had been organizing, had been online. But it was a moment to like synthesize, gather, be in relationship to it, like, again, reinforcing that solidarity that we have with each other, and how do we move forward with our efforts. So it was like a beautiful moment to hear from people in Jackson, Mississippi, or California, or New York, or all over the country, to hear what they're thinking about, and to say, oh, how does that resonate with my own struggles in my own communities? And then how can we support each other to magnify the work that we're doing together?
And what I loved about that also, because I had the great privilege of going to Richmond, what I saw was that at the gathering of the National Resist and Build, that there were local folks who were coming together and building these relationships. And as you say, many of whom had not met in person, but I saw in real time a national gathering not become a burden on local organizers, but really a springboard for y'all. And you really sort of solidified, cohered, and made a huge advancement into the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of us that were kind of meeting and talking and curious. And then once that happened, we were like, oh, again, there's others out there that are working on the same ideas. And we've always thought about ourselves not as just a local like, movement, right? It's not just about Richmond, right? It's about Richmond being in conversation with West Virginia, with Tennessee, with Kentucky, with, other parts of the country, primarily the South, but then globally, right? Like we want to be in conversation. So when that happened, it created opportunities to kind of grow our thinking and our understanding of what this actually means. And so we were excited to see that happen and then use it as a springboard. I think I sent an email up like the day before Resistance happened. Like, well, we need to meet after this as soon as we can. We need to come back together. And we've been continuing to organize around food, right? We've been meeting and sitting down to having dinners together, again, sharing our experiences and trying to think about, well, what are the next steps that we needed to make happen to move this forward in Virginia?
Man, another day, another revolutionary potluck. That's what I say. And I'll tell you what,
Yes.
whether you're a redneck or a Midwestern farm boy, you feed people, and in fact, Pete Seeger had a great line, y'all. He used to say, when we would have an anti-war meeting, we'd have a dozen people, but when we called it a potluck, 100 people showed up. So think
Yeah.
about that, y'all. The joy of eating together and playing music together and creating culture together, not in some kind of superficial way.
Yeah.
But remember that culture is just everything you do and how you do it. Being kind, being compassionate, telling jokes together, loving on each other, taking care of each other. And you know what, y'all? That's good redneck right there. I don't know about you, Shane, but I'm about sick and tired of these folks who try to use, quote, good old boy as an excuse for racist, sexist behavior. Because where I'm from, that shit was not tolerated. Like,
Yeah.
it just wasn't. Like you don't talk like that. Like we take care of each other. And frankly, we protect those who are younger and our elders.
Mhm.
Like there was a mindset, me coming up, about how you supposed to act.
Well, I don't understand how we got here because we have a pedophile in chief, apparently, or at best a pedophile protector. What happened to the idea, literally, of good old boys, but grown into men? Where are the good men? Why are we living in a day and age where men in our society are quiet and they don't stand for quality, equal leadership? It's all backwards. And with these people running around pretending to be cowboys with no training at all, what's the younger generation seeing?
Well, and
It's
again, that's
not good.
why here on Redneck Gone Green, we make sure that faces and voices that are actually doing uh, good work in the community come on. Matthew, I want to circle back again before we move off of the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network. I want to give you an opportunity to share with us a bit of the arc of how it began, what happened through the resistant build, and what's going on now, specifically with the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network.
Yeah. So I think a group of us kind of came together in 2020, right? You have this nexus of like, okay, a few years back, we experienced the Unite the Right, right? And that kind of like shook us a lot, right? But we were like, okay, well, there's got to be something better. And so we were out looking around, like our comrades and at Cooperation Jackson, like we started reading about them and getting to know what they were doing. And then we talked to other people in other places. And so we just started to understand. But then, at this in 2020, we had this this combining of COVID-19 pandemic. We had, the George Floyd protests. Like we're like, there's got to be something different. We can't just be happy with what's around us. This is going to continue to happen, and we see it continuing to happen today. And so that was kind of the nexus. Like we just called out our friends. We said, hey, we're going to start meeting. We are thinking about this idea of a solidarity economy. What is it? What would it mean to build this in Virginia? And so we called our 25 organizers from around the state. So it wasn't just Richmond; it was Danville, Harrisonburg, Norfolk, Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, like all over. We wanted to get as broad a connection as possible, and we just started meeting, started talking. We met once a week for several months, and we're just like trying to connect, trying to hear what everybody's doing. How could we be supportive of each other? How could we deal with the moment that we were in? And then we started just to think about, like, well, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean here in Virginia? What is what would a solidarity economy? We're not just grabbing it from somewhere else and dropping it in. It was like, what does this mean for Virginia? And what are the histories that have come before us? I mean, there's beautiful Appalachian communities that have been, responding to coal and economies and mountaintop removal and all these things in the past. There's, Black communities that have been in these rural areas in Virginia for a long time that have created these beautiful cooperative efforts back in the 1860s and 70s. We wanted to, like, understand that a little bit too, and so that was our grounding. And then we started to connect into other groups that were doing work around the South, and build and imagine what it would mean to do this. The issue with Virginia is that, unlike where you are, David, in California, we don't have the systems in place that are supporting these things, right? Like, we don't have the funders, we don't have the organizations doing that work, right? Like, that are in some other places. So a lot of what we're thinking about doing is, like, how do we actually build that, like, that base infrastructure that needs to happen to make this become a reality? So, like I saw in the chat, people were talking about cooperatives. Like, I come from Wisconsin. Cooperatives are a way of life there because of the agricultural communities. They are not here. They have been kept under wraps because that would mean giving power to labor, and then labor would have control that people didn't want to have. So we don't have that system. We don't have those opportunities to do those things. So it's like, well, what does it mean to actually build that? And so that's the pathway we're on. Like, we're like, what does it mean to get law in place? What does it mean to build up those ecosystems to allow these processes to happen?
And Matthew, I love how you sort of tell the arc in a chronological way, and it really reflects the movement building process. And I love. I reckon I don't remember if it was you or somebody else through the resist and build process coined the phrase that really just stuck with me. We learn to work together by working together, right? Like, it really is. It's a hell of a thing, isn't it? And so the idea of the Resist and Build and the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network really came together. And You Don't Like My Music says democracy at work literally means co-ops. I love that idea.
Yeah.
And so, of course, and let's give a shout out. We literally own the Democracy at Work platform, right, Shane? Like,
That's right. Yeah.
and proud of it, and want to give a shout out, of course, to Professor Rick Wolf, who's been a champion of economic democracy. And I got to say, my mama, I was with her, Shane, over this last week because, mama's boy, any chance I get to be with her, I do. And she said, he can just explain things in such a way that just makes such obvious sense. For an Ivy League trained economist to be able to talk to a Texas mama, like, that's saying something. That's saying
Well,
something.
he did. Yeah, he's been at it for a very long time.
Yeah.
But he also did grow up a poor boy in Ohio before they moved to New Rochelle. So he's
So
been around.
he's got his own trajectory. Look at here, man. We're over the halfway mark, Matthew. So I do want to make sure that we circle back into the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network is doing both practices, like, that doesn't need the state, worker co-ops. Y'all are doing mutual aid, et cetera. We can circle back on some of those things that y'all are doing, as individuals, just for individuals. But you're also not ignoring the state, either the city or the county or the state of Virginia. So I want to talk about a little to separate the kind of practices that you're doing and the policy work where you're not waiting for government to do something for you, but you also have no illusion that government can actually do it, right? That we are going to have to do it ourselves, but the state can help facilitate it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the good conversation in the chat about co-ops and democracy. I just wrote an op-ed that was in the local newspaper about, because we are a right to work state, right? Which is coded language for labor is subject to whatever hell it's done to it, right? Like, we got to think about how do we build up workers and better ways. And so, that's why we've been interested in cooperatives, right? Like it's about employee ownership. It's about people owning the means to the means of production in new ways. It's about giving them access to practicing democracy, not just at the election moment, but also just in their daily lives. Like our feeling is that provides meaning, right? Like we don't want just jobs that benefit us, like our basic, like provider for our day, like living wage stuff, providing basic money. We also want to have purpose in life. And so I think a lot of what we've been doing is trying to think about, yeah, we know that right to work's a problem, but we want to go beyond it. Like, what does it mean to create a right to meaningful work, right? Like, let's move beyond this standard that's been going on for so long. And we see that being realized in cooperative development, but also like democratizing capital, right? Like people need to be able to use the funds in their communities to like build them up. And so we've been doing that. And then that's also led to participatory budgeting, which, that's something I've been working on for a long time. It's not perfect. I'll be the first person to say it's not a perfect process. It's got a lot of challenges, primarily that, people in power don't want to give up power. And so, what does it mean for a community to actually make decisions together? Is that something we don't do as much as we used to? And so, PB kind of creates an opportunity to do that, right?
So hold on, PB stands for?
Participatory budgeting. It's a hard word to say. Like I've said it so many times, but we always shorten it down to peanut butter, PB, which doesn't mean peanut butter. So,
well, look, I want you to, in the same spirit that you've been doing it, break it down without dumbing it down. What the heck is participatory budgeting?
Yeah, so participatory budgeting is a process where residents of a city get to decide a part of the city's budget, right? Super simple, right? You think a city might have we'll take Richmond for instance. Richmond has a $3 billion budget, right? Lots of that goes to like roads and schools and all the important things that we need for the city to function. But we think that residents should have a say in some of how that money is decided on. So this is a process that's been going on for over 30 years. It started in South America, has gone all around the world. We're not the first person to do it. It's been tried and tested in a bunch of different places. But we know what happens when people actually come together and make some decisions together. They make good choices, right? They make thoughtful, like important things that will impact their communities. And we really believe that when you give people the opportunity, that's what they do. And so participatory budgeting is just a year-long process where you collect ideas from the community, say, how would you make your neighborhood better? And then you come together and create proposals based on those ideas. And then you vote on those projects and those projects get funded. And then you keep doing it. Like you can't just do it once. You got to keep doing it over and over and over again, building up that muscle of collaboration and collective liberation that we see it being.
So thank you so much. A beautiful explanation and an inspiring one at that. Now I'm going to get down into some brass tacks because I want you to describe what it took to bring the process of participatory budgeting from a concept into an idea. Because I see your facial expression. That shit ain't easy, is it, Matthew?
Yeah. 10 years. It took us 10 years to get it off the ground. I mean, friends of mine started an organization that's been doing this across the US in 2011, 2013. So I knew about it back then. And it's taken us till 2023 to make it a reality in Virginia. And it happened, it was a little bit of luck, right? Like I met a city council member in Richmond, and we had a workshop about it. He's like, we should do this. Like, I really believe we should do this. And so that started an effort in 2019. We got a city council to actually do a resolution, say we should do this. They all voted for it. And then that started a conversation that we kept moving forward. And it wasn't until 2022 that we got a commission of residents to help design it. Because that's always the first step, is that you want the residents of a community to be designing and developing these programs. It's not some, getting some master's degree, PhD, designing it and then doing it to people. It's about building up the capacity of the community to make those decisions for themselves. So we started that in 20 2021, 2022. And then we just finished up our first cycle of that last year. You know, and they decided where $3 billion is spent. So
Can I
And
can
so
I ask
tell us,
how let me interrupt.
yeah.
How do you go about getting that started? Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, so isn't that determining the budgetary aspects of a city the size of Richmond, broken down into its individual districts? Isn't that the responsibility of the elected
Mm.
city council? I mean, I know I'm thinking of Manhattan and New York City, like how that sort of works. And I get it, in a city this large and this populated would be a monumental clusterfuck, I would assume. But Richmond seems a little bit more manageable and doable. But at the same time, I'm like, so I'm confused. You
Yeah.
know, separated out from me. Like the citizens get a part of the decision-making process, but then what's the job of the district council persons? Like,
So let's one thing I'll say is that $3 million of a $3 billion budget, right? That's like
right.
0.001% budget. It's like it's
It's
nothing.
almost laughable.
Yeah, it's almost laughable. And people say that to us, right? Like that's a joke, right? You're kind of you're not treating me real. And we're like, yep, you're totally right. You should have more control of a bigger chunk of this. But I think it's a lot of it is like going in and trying to rebuild some trust, trying to educate people about how government works, right? Like most of us are so distant from it. We don't trust it. We don't believe in it anymore, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's take some control of it and see what we can make happen with it. And I think when you start to do that, people start to see, oh, here's how a decision's made. And I mean, I've only been in government for 2 years, right? Like I've not worked in government most of my life, mostly on the outside, putting pressure in. And now I'm inside of government and trying to figure out like, well, what can we do to center the voices of residents and the decisions that are happening in City Hall? But we have to do a lot. We have to do a lot of educating on both sides, right?
Right.
Got to help city staff understand what community wants, and community has to understand the decision making process that goes on in City Hall. Because I don't think people in City Hall are trying to do bad things, right? Most of them are trying to do their jobs. They overcomplicate it sometimes, but like, right, like it's not as easy as just planting a tree. Like it takes you, if you want a tree to grow and and live for 40 or 50 years, like you have to like plant it, take care of it, like make sure it's nurtured and see it grow. And so, those people are thinking through those things. And so it's like, how do we pair up the lived experience of a person living in a neighborhood with that knowledge base so that they can actually achieve something together?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what this is all about. And it's really just about having conversations. Like when you ask someone like, how would you make your neighborhood better? Right. I mean,
Yeah.
some people have
Well, I
never
mean,
been
most
asked the
people,
question.
yeah, or stop to think about it. You know, I mean, like you mentioned a minute ago, people don't know how it works. They've been too removed from it,
Yep.
and probably didn't have any political education in school. I mean, they did their
Right.
due diligence to remove that decades ago. But I have to imagine too that one of the byproducts that's positive that comes out of that sort of an engagement is that people are a little bit less apolitical at the end of that. Once they get to, like you said, building a little bit of trust back. Is that? I mean, I don't want to derail the conversation, but curious to know.
I don't know if I wouldn't say that they're less apolitical. I think one, they're like, oh, I see how this works. Now I can hold people a little bit more accountable.
Mm,
Like I can make them better, bigger, like different demands. Like I know how the system allows me to do those things in different ways that are mostly obscured from whatever day people are. Like most people show up at a city council meeting and are like, I'm fighting for my idea. Well, anything that's happening at a city council meeting is already decided on, right? Like you need to be following it way earlier and engaging in the conversation or much earlier. So I think you're creating a more educated, understood like public so that they can be more, more thoughtful about like what they want to see happen and what their future of their city is going to look like.
Matthew, thank you for that intervention, Shane, and I think it is absolutely on point. And it occurs to me that, look, on the one hand, 3 million of 3 billions is a small percentage, but $3 million ain't chump change, right? And it is an opportunity for solidarity economy in practice, democratizing not just the workplace or co-ops, as important as those are, but the power to shape resources and political life. Like, this is a toehold, and it is my hope, and I reckon your expectation, that you do this well so that it happens again with even more resources and a higher percentage. Am I getting this wrong, or is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, I will say it's funny is that we joke about how we built the house with a spoon in this first year, right? We weren't totally given the resources that we needed to really do this well, and now we're advocating because we did it. We actually outperformed bigger cities with way bigger budgets.
Mm.
Oh, hold
We're
on a
just
second. So, in
so
other words, it works. Is that what you're saying?
exactly. And people actually want it, right? Like, I think we thought the distrust with the government was so strong that people were like, I'm not going to trust you. I don't believe you. Like, you are a government schlock and don't, like, go away from me. But we're like, no, like, I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of, like, voice this. And the crazy thing is, like, 40% of the ideas we collected were about pedestrian safety, right? We've had 7 traffic fatalities in Richmond since the
Mm.
January 1st, right? People have been getting killed by cars. Residents know what needs to happen. And then we need to invest in that now. So, they voted on like $600,000 worth of trees, right? They wanted to lower the heat of their communities by planting trees because the heat is killing people. They want to make their neighborhoods more beautiful. So, we now need to follow through on making sure that that happens. And that's our big challenge right now is making sure that we get and work with our local departments to make that all a reality.
So, Turf Gasson has given good news, Matthew. You're getting a lot of love in the chat, and I want to thank the Redneck Gone Green community for being so highly participatory and engaging with us. Uh, I also want to ask you, Matthew, like, because you're being like, you're not just being a hype man, right? You're saying, well, here's the challenges, here's what we're doing, here's what we're learning, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we say, right where I'm from. So
Yeah.
I also want to point out that you are not the only community that are doing participatory budgeting. In fact, this movement has some momentum, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going on in the US since 2011, 2010, 2011. It's been expanding. There was a little bit of a bump when all the ARPA dollars came down. We saw like
Hold on. ARPA
oh,
stands for?
yeah, American Recovery Act. So COVID-19, like all the money the federal government
Mm.
pumped into the economy to like get things moving again.
And so, hold on. And before you go further, I do want to point something out, y'all. That was a form of universal basic income, actually. And do you know what the data actually shows? We solved child poverty for a year and a half in this country. How? Through direct government payments, right? And literally, child poverty was solved for a year and a half while those were coming through. And there's hard science data on it, just like there's hard science data on whether participatory budgeting works or not. And get this, Matthew, there's 150 and plus universal basic income pilots that have run. And guess what happens? Every time, these are all studies. And you know what the studies show? Every single cotton picking time, that they work. And when I
Yeah.
say that they work, I mean, contrary to the right wing assertion, what you find is that people get off of welfare. They do not spend their money on drugs and alcohol. Instead, they use it for education, for food. They use it as a hand up, not a hand out. These solidarity economy practices are good policy, including good policy for taxpayers. This is the point that we've got to really break through and help people understand economic democracy is actually good for all of us and the community.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't. Yeah, I've got to just agree. It's like it's when we take we take people and put them together, they do make good decisions, right? Like there's been this like narrative that, oh, it's all about individuality and like you're the center of everything. But like, no, when you, I was at a bar with a friend last week, just to share a story. We were sitting at the bar having a few drinks, talking about stuff. This is a friend that was on the Richmond People's Budget Commission, and this guy was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And we were talking, well, we're working on this project, and it's about community coming together and making decisions. He's like, I don't believe in that. I'm like, people are just innately like individualistic. I'm like, that's not true, right? When people sit down together, they can come up with really amazing solutions, and allocate funds. They can create policies and programs. Like the thing is, we don't believe that. It's a fake story. It's fake news, right? That is not a reality. But we can do it. We do it well and we do it thoughtfully. We listen to each other. We can make.
So that's why Congress doesn't work.
Yeah, maybe.
It's part of it. It's part of it, and it's not just Congress; it's their donor class, right? And the predatory class. And in fact, hey y'all, I know that normally we just have a conversation, but now I'm gonna spring a pop quiz on Shane and Matthew and anybody in the chat who can give me the answer to this quote. It really came up for me, Shane. I'm gonna make sure I get it right. So, who said people of the same trade seldom meet together, but that the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or some contrivance to raise prices? And I'll give you it. Is it Karl Marx or somebody else? Matthew? Do either of you know? Y'all, that's Adam Smith and The Wealth of Nations. And
Yep.
the reason I really wanted to put that out there, y'all, is Adam Smith is used as an example of the market's uber alles. But Adam Smith was actually a moral philosopher. And in addition to The Wealth of Nations, he also wrote a whole book on moral sentiments. And literally, he argued that manufacturers and merchants limit or conspire to limit competition. They artificially raise prices. They act against the public interest, including not only anti-wage, but they include political manipulation. So Adam Smith talked about how ordinary people needed the ability to have the ability to create society and cultural institutions that included participation. And this is the thing about, obviously, participatory budgeting is literally about participation. It's not only about like how the money is spent, but to empower people to make the decisions and to have to get together in a group. And I have to listen to Matthew make the argument about, hey, we need trees to deal with the heat sink. And I need to hear Shane say, but we need a new health clinic. And like in this neighborhood, like we really are having problems finding people, getting health care. And to hear Ruthie say, yeah, but this is food apartheid in this community. Like, and not a food desert, right? There's an intentional, deliberate decisions that are being made. And then other people can talk about the need for libraries. I guess the point I'm getting at, y'all, is what I love about the participatory budgeting process is the process itself teaches us how to collectively make and implement decisions. It's not just about the money. It's also about the democratic spirit. Like you work out, you build your muscle. You do participatory budgeting, you're building civic muscle.
Yep. I 100% agree with you on that. It's something we don't do or know about anymore. It's been, someone said in the chat, it's been kind of beaten out of us. And so it takes us time to think about it. But I think once we catch it, right, we know it and we can continue to work on it. And we had 27 people in a room once a week, like sorting through 2,000 ideas to then eventually come up with about 72 ideas that would then eventually get on a ballot for PB, for Richmond People's Budget. they were super committed, and they still are committed, right? They're showing up at meetings still and talking to us and talking to each other. Like, we've created a connection with them and others in their community. And I think people want that right now.
So Matthew, I'm curious, how many people overall, are there some numbers about how many people in the city of Richmond participated in some way, shape, or form with the people's participatory budgeting process?
I would say our numbers aren't perfect, right? But we collected 2,000 ideas, and that was from about 1,700 people. So that was just the idea collection. We had a group of people that volunteered to help create project proposals based on those ideas. So that was like 27 people, 3 from each council district. And then we had 5,000 people participate in the voting process. And that's for a thing that has never been done in Virginia. This is the first time it's been done in Virginia. So it was new. People weren't really totally sure about it. That's why we're like, oh, we got to do this again. So we think that numbers can keep moving up. Although I would say the numbers, just like numbers, are not always our best metric, right? Like, we want to make sure we're getting good ideas, right? I'd rather get, instead of getting 2,000 so ideas, I'd rather have like 500 awesome ideas. So we're thinking about the next cycle of doing some assembly work, right? So we get people in a room together to think through those ideas and make them better before they go into the pile to get reviewed for the future.
Well, looky here, Matthew. This hour has just flown by. I do want to give you an opportunity for any closing thoughts and any websites or how people can follow your work, etc. So, like the final thoughts, including a little good old-fashioned self-promotion.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate it. Yeah. So if you're interested in following the Richmond People's Budget, you can go to rvapb.org. That's our website. You can see all of the stuff. Like, there's notes and meeting minutes and everything on that from as far back as possible. You can see all the ideas. Everything's transparent. We put it up to the public as soon as possible. We are not trying to hide anything. So you'll see that. You can follow that also on Instagram at RVAPB. We're there.
So one of the people in the chat, I'm going to jump in, asked, how did you reach these people, Matthew?
We got outside and started talking to them. Seriously, that's, I mean, it's slow and methodical, but seriously, going out and just going to talk to people. We would go to meetings, we say hello, build relationships. People criticize us for not getting on social media right away and not like blasting that. I'm like, that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to build relationships, build connections. So that's why we think if we keep building on it, it'll keep expanding and evolving as we move forward. So, but that's the core of it. It's like talking to people.
So I just want to say thank you, Matthew Slaats, again, the co-founder of the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network. He's also active with the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, as well as the Richmond People's Budget process. Any finals, Matthew?
Yeah. Also, check out VA Solidarity. That's the Virginia Solidarity Economy Network's website, vasolidarity.org. And then last but not least, because it just went live today, I've got a new newsletter out called, it's got a long name, Infrastructures of the Marvelous, which is my new Substack, which I'm moving forward with, which talks about resist and build, the need to like balance resist and build. So
that's fantastic. Well, congratulations, and let's make sure that Redneck Gone Green and Infrastructures of the Marvelous cross-pollinate. Like, we need to build a little echo chamber of shit that works, right? And so, again, thank you, Matthew Slaats, for joining us. I want to thank Shane Knight, co-host of Redneck Gone Green, and really technical producer and all things that make this happen. Ruthie Engelkey, who serves behind the scenes, working all the magic behind the scenes to make this go forward. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the viewer and the listener, whether you are watching live or whether you're watching a recording on this on Democracy at Work's platform, or you're listening to the podcast where you can get this. It's all, or subscribe to my Substack, Redneck Gone Green. Cleverly, it's all branded Redneck Gone Green. But I do want to remind you of this. I'm going to ask you, and everybody does it, But please like, comment, subscribe, engage with this media. The reality is that the reason that people say that is because the algorithms are working against us. People who have the conversations that we have are not sanctioned by corporate media. In fact, they are depressing it. And Shane, you know, as a media expert yourself, that the ability to do organic reach is getting harder and harder. And the only way you break through is by ordinary people. And as you don't like my music, we got to rebel with each other, right? So I want to ask you to please participate. Please subscribe to Redneck Gone Green on the Substack, especially so that you'll get an announcement. I always do a deep dive writing like I did with Matthew. Lastly, next month is February. That's Black History Month. So, in honor of Black History Month, our first guest will be Joshua Dedman. Joshua is the executive director of the Labor Network for Solidarity. He is a longtime labor activist, environmental activist, and social justice activist. You're going to want to join us next Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, keep on keeping on. Can't stop, won't stop, y'all. Peace.